The cargo ship docked at Station Vex 7 with a soft hiss of equalizing pressure. Junho stretched his arms above his head and yawned. It had been a long flight from the Earth sector, 3 weeks of nothing but frozen meals and old movies. He pressed the button to lower the cargo ramp and whistled. From behind him came the clicking of claws on metal floor. "Come on, Barum, time to stretch your legs," Junho said. The German shepherd trotted up beside him, tail wagging. Barum had been a good companion during the lonely trip. Better than good, actually. The dog had kept Junho sane through the empty weeks of space travel. At the docking checkpoint, a tall alien with blue skin and large eyes waited behind a transparent desk. Her name tag identified her as Hyeji, station administrator. She had the delicate features common to the Veline species, with long fingers that moved gracefully across her holographic display. "Welcome to Station Vex 7, Hyeji said. Her voice came through the universal translator with a musical quality. "Please present your identification and cargo manifest." Junho handed over his datapad. Hyeji's eyes scanned the information quickly. Everything seemed normal until she reached a particular section. Her head tilted slightly to the side. "The form indicates you are traveling with a companion organism," she said. "Station regulations require all biological entities to be registered and approved before disembarkation." "Oh, right. That's just Baram," Junho said, gesturing behind him. "He's my dog." "Dog?" Hyeji repeated. The translator made a small buzzing sound, struggling with the word. "Please provide a holographic image for our records." Junho pulled up a photo on his pad. It showed Baram sitting in a field of grass, tongue hanging out, eyes bright and happy. Hyeji leaned forward to look at the image. Her expression softened. "Oh, how adorable," she said. "The fur looks very soft. Is this a common Earth companion?" "Very common," Junho confirmed. "Humans have kept dogs for thousands of years. They're part of the family, really." Hyeji processed the registration with quick taps on her screen. "The creature appears harmless. Approval granted. I hope you enjoy your stay on our station." Word spread quickly through the station's social network. A human had arrived with an Earth companion creature. Within an hour, a small crowd had gathered near the docking bay. Most of them were Veline, but there were a few other species mixed in. They chatted excitedly among themselves. "I heard Earth animals are very friendly," one said. "My cousin visited Earth sector once. She said humans form emotional bonds with their companions," another added. "I want to see it. Human culture is so fascinating." Junho emerged from his ship, carrying a bag over his shoulder. Beside him walked Baram on a leather leash. The crowd fell silent. Several aliens took involuntary steps backward. Baram was bigger than the hologram had suggested. Much bigger. He stood nearly waist-high to Junho, with thick muscles visible beneath his black and tan fur. His mouth hung open as he panted from the warm station air, revealing rows of very white, very sharp teeth. His eyes scanned the crowd with an alert, focused intelligence. Hyeji felt her stomach tighten. Those eyes. She had seen eyes like that before in documentaries about predators. Eyes that tracked movement. Eyes that calculated distance. Eyes that hunted. "Everyone, this is Baram," Junho announced cheerfully. He seemed completely unaware of the tension in the air. "He's a little excited. New places always get him worked up." Baram's tail wagged back and forth in broad sweeps. To Junho, this was a sign of happiness. To the Veline in the crowd, it looked like the switching of a cat's tail before a pounce. The dog took a step forward, pulling slightly on the leash. Several aliens gasped and moved back further. "It's okay, boy," Junho said, kneeling down. He scratched Baram behind the ears with both hands. The dog leaned into the touch, eyes closing in pleasure. A low rumbling sound came from his chest. "Is it growling?" someone in the crowd whispered. That's purring, I think, another responded. Maybe? Do Earth creatures purr? Hyeji forced herself to maintain her professional composure. She had welcomed thousands of visitors to this station. She prided herself on her hospitality and open-mindedness, but every instinct in her body screamed that she was looking at a predator. Those teeth weren't for eating plants. That muscular build wasn't for running away from danger. This was a creature built to chase, to catch, to bite, and the human was scratching its ears like it was a harmless pet. Taemin, the security officer, appeared at Hyeji's side. He was older than her, with pale blue skin that had faded with age. His hand rested on his communication device. "Administrator," he said quietly, "should I be concerned about this situation?" Hyeji watched as Junho stood up and waved to the crowd. Baram sat beside him, tongue lolling out, looking almost comical. But she couldn't shake the feeling that she was watching something dangerous pretend to be harmless. "Monitor it," she said finally. "Increase surveillance in any area the human visits. If that creature shows any signs of aggression, I want to know immediately." "Understood," Taemin replied. He didn't look relieved by her decision. Junho walked past them toward the main corridor, Baram trotting obediently at his side. The crowd parted like water, maintaining a careful distance. The humans seemed puzzled by their reaction but didn't comment on it. As they disappeared around the corner, Hyeji heard one last sound that made her blood run cold. Baram had spotted something interesting and made a noise. It was something between a bark and a howl. It echoed through the metal corridors of the station like the hunting call of something wild and untamed. She pulled up her desk display and began typing a message to the station council. They needed to know what had just arrived on their peaceful diplomatic hub. They needed to know that a human had brought a predator into their home. Minseo had been studying human culture for 3 years. As the station's lead xenobiologist, it was her job to understand the various species that passed through Vex 7. Humans fascinated her more than most. They were physically weak compared to many species, yet they had spread across dozens of star systems. They built incredible technology, created beautiful art, and formed complex social bonds. But there was something about them that never quite made sense, something slightly dangerous lurking beneath their friendly surfaces. When she received Hyeji's alert about the human's companion creature, Minseo immediately accessed the Earth database. She typed in the species name that Junho had provided during registration. "Canis lupus familiaris," she read aloud, "commonly known as dog." The screen filled with information. Minseo's eyes grew wider with each line she read. Her hands began to tremble slightly. Dogs were descended from wolves, not evolved from some distant wolf-like ancestor, actually descended from wolves. Gray wolves, one of Earth's apex predators. Humans had somehow taken these pack-hunting carnivores and convinced them to live in their homes, to sleep in their beds, to play with their children. The bite force measurement made her feel sick. 235 pounds per square inch. That was enough to crack bone. The database helpfully included a note that larger breeds could exceed 300 pounds of pressure. She scrolled through images. There were hundreds of different types. Tiny ones that could fit in a bag, massive ones that weighed more than an adult veline. Some bred for guarding, some for hunting, some specifically designed for fighting. Humans had taken a wild predator and shaped it into countless forms, each suited for different purposes. "This can't be right," Minseo muttered. She cross-referenced with 3 other databases. They all confirmed the same information. A soft knock on her lab door made her jump. Doyun. One of the young maintenance workers poked his head inside. "Dr. Minseo, I just had the strangest experience," he said. "Come in, Doyun. Tell me what happened." The young Veline entered, looking shaken. "I was checking the air filtration system in Corridor 12. That's near where the human is staying. I heard footsteps behind me, so I turned around." He paused, swallowing hard. The creature was there, just standing in the hallway, staring at me. Did it attack? Minseo asked urgently. No, that's the weird part. It just walked toward me. Its mouth was open. I could see its teeth. Really big teeth. I couldn't move. I thought I was going to die. Doyen sat down in a chair, his legs seeming weak. Then the human came around the corner. He said something in that language of theirs. The creature sat down immediately. Just like that, like a machine responding to a command. What happened next? The human walked up to me. He asked if I wanted to pet his dog. Those were his words. Pet it. Like it was some kind of harmless plant. Doyen shook his head in disbelief. I didn't move. Couldn't move. So the human demonstrated. He made the creature perform tricks. Tricks? He would say words, and the creature would respond. Sit, stay, lie down, shake hands. Doyen held up his hand, which still trembled slightly. That last one was the worst. The creature lifted its paw and placed it in the human's hand. So gentle. Like the teeth and claws weren't even there. Minseo pulled up a chair beside him. Doyen, I need you to tell the human that I want to speak with him. Officially. I need to understand this relationship between humans and these dogs. An hour later, Junho sat in Minseo's laboratory with Baram lying at his feet. The dog's eyes were half closed, relaxed and peaceful. Minseo sat across from them, her recording device activated. Thank you for agreeing to this interview, Minseo began. I hope you don't mind, but I've been researching your companion species. I have many questions. Sure, no problem, Junho said with an easy smile. What do you want to know about dogs? Let me start with the most obvious question. Why do humans choose to live with predators? Junho laughed. Predators? I mean, I guess technically, but that's not how we think of them. Dogs are family. But they're descended from wolves, apex predators, pack hunters that brought down prey much larger than themselves. Well, yeah, that was like 15,000 years ago, though. Maybe more. Dogs and wolves are pretty different now. Junho reached down and scratched Baram's head. The dog's tail thumped against the floor. Dogs chose us as much as we chose them. It was a partnership. They helped us hunt. We shared our food. Over time, they became more than just helpers. They became friends. Minseo consulted her notes. The database says humans have bred dogs for specific purposes. Guarding, hunting, fighting, even war. Some dogs were bred for those things, yes. But mostly, dogs are just companions now. They make us happy. We make them happy. It's a good deal for everyone. But how do you control them? I witnessed Doyen's encounter. The creature approached him in what appeared to be a hunting posture. You spoke a single word and it obeyed instantly. How is that possible? Junho considered this. It's called training. You teach them commands from when they're puppies. Young ones, I mean. You reward good behavior. Correct bad behavior. But it's more than just training. Dogs want to please us. It's built into them now. They're loyal. They love their humans. Love? Minseo leaned forward. A predator loves you? Sure. Why not? Humans love dogs. Dogs love humans. Baram here would die protecting me, and I'd do the same for him. Junho's voice carried absolute certainty. Minseo looked at Baram, who had now rolled onto his back, exposing his belly in a vulnerable position. The creature that had terrified Doyen was now lying completely defenseless, making small, grunting sounds of contentment as Junho rubbed his stomach. This is the most remarkable thing I've ever studied, Minseo said quietly. Your species took one of your world's most dangerous predators and made it trust you so completely that it would sacrifice itself for you. And you trust it so completely that you let it sleep in your home, near your children. When you put it that way, it does sound pretty crazy, Junho admitted. But that's just what dogs are. They're not wolves anymore. They're dogs. They're ours and we're theirs. Minseo saved the recording and sat back in her chair. Outside her laboratory, she knew the station's inhabitants were frightened. They saw teeth and claws and hunting instincts. But Junho saw a friend, a partner, a family member. Perhaps that was the real secret of humanity's success across the galaxy. They didn't fear nature. They befriended it. Soman had been told not to wander off. Her parent, Ambassador Kyung-won, had made it very clear during the briefing this morning. The station was safe, yes, but there were important diplomatic meetings happening. Soman needed to stay in the designated guest quarters and play quietly. But Soman was 8 years old, and 8-year-olds got bored very quickly. The guest quarters had nothing interesting, just boring furniture and boring walls and boring educational programs on the view screen. Outside, the station was full of new things to explore. Different species walked the corridors. Strange foods filled the public dining areas, and somewhere on this station was the human with his creature. Salmon had seen the footage that everyone was sharing on their devices. The creature called a dog. It looked scary in some images, with its big teeth and strong body, but in other images it looked almost cute, fluffy, like it might be soft to touch. The door to the guest quarters wasn't locked. Why would it be? The station was safe. Soman slipped out into the corridor and began exploring. In the security center, Taemin watched his monitors with tired eyes. The night shift was always quiet. Most of the station's inhabitants were sleeping. The corridors were empty except for a few late-night workers and maintenance crews. One monitor showed the humans' quarters. Junho was inside, probably sleeping. The dog was outside the door, lying on the floor. The human had explained that Baram liked to sleep near the entrance. Something about guarding, protecting. Taemin didn't like having that creature loose on the station, but Junho had insisted it was safe. The dog was trained, the dog was obedient, the dog wouldn't hurt anyone. Hyeji had reluctantly agreed, as long as the creature stayed in the less populated sections of the station. Movement on another monitor caught Taemin's attention. A small figure was walking down Corridor 9. He zoomed in and felt his blood run cold. It was a child. A Veline child, wearing the distinctive clothing of the diplomatic guest quarters. And Corridor 9 led directly to the humans section. He activated his communication device. All security personnel, we have a situation. Guest child is approaching the restricted zone. Moving to intercept. But even as he spoke, he knew they wouldn't reach the child in time. She was too close. And the dog was already standing up, alert, having heard something. On the monitor, Taemin watched the worst-case scenario unfold in real time. Soman turned the corner and saw the creature. She stopped walking, suddenly aware that she had made a terrible mistake. This wasn't like the cute images. This was real. The dog was huge, much bigger than she was. Its ears were pointed forward. Its eyes locked onto her immediately, those hunting eyes that tracked movement. Baram took a step forward, then another. His head was lowered slightly. His body moved with predatory grace. Soman wanted to run, but her legs wouldn't move. She had learned in school that running from a predator was the worst thing to do. It triggered their chase instinct. She stood frozen, watching the creature approach. Taemin was already running toward Corridor 9, but he was 3 sections away. Too far, much too far. He kept the video feed active on his wrist display, unwilling to look but unable to turn away. Soman took a step backward. Her foot caught on a seam in the floor panel. She fell hard, landing on her back. The impact knocked the air from her lungs. Pain shot through her elbow where it hit the metal floor. She started crying, tears running down her face. Not just from pain, but from fear, pure, overwhelming fear. Baram moved faster now. He was at her side in seconds. Soman closed her eyes, waiting for teeth, for pain, for everything to end. Instead, she felt something warm and wet touch her face. Then again, a gentle pressure against her cheek. She opened her eyes and saw the dog's face very close to hers. His tongue had licked away her tears. His eyes, which had seemed so frightening before, looked concerned, almost sad. Bahram lay down beside her, not on top of her, just beside her, close enough that she could feel his warmth. His tail moved slowly, softly. He made a low sound, almost like a whine, a comforting sound. Soman's crying began to slow. She reached out one hand, hesitant, and touched the dog's fur. It was soft, incredibly soft. Bahram moved his head closer, letting her hand rest on top of it. That was when Junho appeared, having been woken by Bahram's movement. He saw the scene and understood immediately. He didn't rush forward, didn't make loud noises. He simply walked calmly to where Somin and Bahram lay on the floor. "Hey there," Junho said gently. "Are you okay? Did you hurt yourself when you fell?" Soman nodded, still touching Bahram's head. "My elbow hurts." "Bahram won't hurt you. He's very gentle with kids. Children, I mean. Do you want to sit up?" Junho helped Soman to a sitting position. Bahram adjusted his position too, keeping close but not crowding. The dog's tail continued its slow, reassuring movement. Taemin arrived, breathing hard from running. He saw Soman sitting safely on the floor, one arm around the dog's neck, and stopped in confusion. This wasn't what he had expected to find. Behind him came Ambassador Kyung-won, having received Taemin's emergency alert. "Soman!" The ambassador's voice was sharp with fear and anger. "Get away from that creature right now!" But Soman didn't move. "It's okay, parent. He's nice. He made me feel better when I fell." Kyung-won stared at the scene. The predator and the child, the monster and the innocent. Except the monster was lying calmly while the child hugged it. The predator was being gentle, protective. "I don't understand," Kyung-won said, looking at Junho. "Your creature could have hurt my child, could have killed my child, but it didn't. Why?" Junho knelt down beside Somin and Bahram. "Dogs protect children. It's instinct for them. They see kids as part of their pack, something to guard, not harm. When Soman fell and started crying, Bahram's first response was to comfort her, to make sure she was safe. But it's a predator. Predators hunt. They kill. Dogs haven't been wild predators for thousands of years. They're our companions, our family. Yes, they have teeth. Yes, they have strength. But they use those things to protect us, not hurt us." Junho scratched Bahram behind the ears. "This is just what dogs do." Kyung-won looked at Soman, who was smiling now, all fear gone. The ambassador had come prepared to file formal complaints, to demand the creature be removed from the station, possibly to call for Junho's arrest. But instead, Kyung-won saw something impossible. A child finding comfort in the presence of a predator. "I think," Kyung-won said slowly, "that we need to have a very long discussion about Earth and its customs, because nothing about this makes sense according to what I know about the natural world." Junho smiled. "Yeah, humans tend to break a lot of rules about how nature is supposed to work. We're weird that way." The main amphitheater of Station Vex 7 had never been so crowded. Hundreds of beings filled the curved seats, representing a dozen different species. They spoke in hushed voices, their attention focused on the empty stage below. Word had spread quickly about Ambassador Kyung-won's demand for a public demonstration. Everyone wanted to see the human and his predator. Hyeji stood at the back of the amphitheater, her hands clasped tightly together. As station administrator, she had tried to suggest a private demonstration instead, something smaller, less likely to cause panic if things went wrong. But Kyung-won had insisted. The ambassador wanted proof, wanted witnesses, wanted everyone to see exactly how much control Junho had over his creature. Or how little. Yoonji, the station council representative, appeared at Hyeji's side. She was older than most Veline, her blue skin pale with age, her eyes sharp with intelligence. "This is a risk," Yunji said quietly. "If the creature becomes aggressive in front of this many people, the panic could be dangerous." "I know," Hyeji replied. "But refusing would have created a diplomatic incident. Kyungwon has influence across multiple sectors. We couldn't say no. Then we must hope the human knows what he's doing." On the stage below, Junho emerged from the side entrance with Baram walking calmly beside him. The crowd's conversation died instantly. Everyone stared at the dog. In the bright lights of the amphitheater, Baram looked even more intimidating than usual. His muscles moved smoothly under his fur. His teeth were visible as he panted. His eyes scanned the crowd with that same predatory awareness that had frightened so many. Junho seemed relaxed, completely comfortable. He had changed into cleaner clothes for the demonstration, but otherwise showed no signs of nervousness. "Thank you all for coming," Junho said. His voice carried through the amphitheater's sound system. "I understand that many of you are concerned about Baram. I hope this demonstration will help you understand the relationship between humans and dogs." He started with simple commands. "Sit, stand, lie down." Baram obeyed each one immediately, his responses precise and controlled. The crowd watched, impressed but not convinced. These were just basic obedience exercises. They proved the human could command the creature, but didn't prove the creature was safe. "Now I'll demonstrate something more complex," Junho said. He pulled out a small piece of dried meat from his pocket. "This is one of Baram's favorite treats." He placed the treat carefully on Baram's nose. The dog's eyes crossed slightly, trying to see the food. His body tensed with want. Every instinct had to be screaming at him to eat it. But he didn't move, didn't even try. "Stay," Junho said. 30 seconds passed. A minute. The dog's desire was obvious in every line of his body, but he remained perfectly still. Finally, Junho said, "Okay." Baram flipped the treat into the air and caught it in his mouth, swallowing it in one gulp. The crowd murmured in surprise. "Dogs don't just obey commands," Junho explained. "They understand patience, self-control. Their own desires become secondary to their humans' wishes, not because they're forced to obey, but because they want to please us." Next, Junho walked to the far side of the stage. "Baram, stay." He walked away, leaving the dog sitting alone in the center of the stage. 20 feet separated them, then 30. Junho stood at the edge of the stage and waited. Baram remained in place, though his body language showed he wanted to follow. His tail moved slightly. His eyes tracked Junho's every movement. Small whining sounds escaped his throat, but he didn't move from his spot. "Come," Junho finally called. Baram ran across the stage and sat beside Junho, tail wagging furiously. Junho praised him and scratched his ears. In the audience, Ji-won, a young communications officer, leaned forward in her seat. She had been frightened of Baram at first, like everyone else. But watching this demonstration, she began to see something different. The dog wasn't a mindless predator. He was intelligent, controlled, and the bond between him and Junho was real. "Now for the most important demonstration," Junho said. "This one shows the depth of trust between humans and dogs." He lay down on the stage floor, closing his eyes and going completely still. The crowd waited, confused. What was this supposed to prove? Baram's reaction was immediate and dramatic. His ears went back. His tail stopped wagging. He approached Junho slowly, whining loudly. He nudged Junho's face with his nose. When that got no response, he pawed at Junho's arm. The whining became more frantic. Baram circled Junho twice, then lay down beside him, pressing his body close. Small, distressed sounds continued to come from the dog. The entire amphitheater watched in stunned silence. The predator was worried, upset, trying to help his human. After a minute, Junho sat up. Bahram immediately jumped on him, licking his face, tail wagging so hard his entire back half moved. The relief in the dog's body language was obvious to everyone watching. "Dogs care about their humans," Junho said, his voice thick with emotion. "When I was in distress, Bahram didn't attack anyone, didn't become violent. He tried to help me. That's what dogs do. They protect. They care. They love." Minseo stood up in her seat. "May I ask a question?" "Of course," Junho replied. "What happens if you give the dog conflicting commands? If his instincts tell him one thing but you tell him another?" Junho considered this. "His training would win. His trust in me would win. But I wouldn't put him in that situation. Part of having a dog is understanding their nature and respecting it. I don't ask him to do things that would truly harm him or go against his core being." "So, there are limits?" another voice called from the crowd. "Of course, dogs aren't machines. They're living beings with their own thoughts and feelings. The relationship works because we respect each other. We trust each other. It's a partnership." Ambassador Kyungwon stood. "I came here today expecting to confirm my fears, to see evidence that this creature is dangerous. Instead, I've seen something I don't fully understand. A predator that chooses not to hunt. A weapon that chooses not to harm. This contradicts everything I know about nature." "Maybe that's the point," Junho said. "Humans have always had a strange relationship with nature. We don't accept things as they are. We imagine what they could be. We saw wolves and imagined friends. And because we believed it was possible, we made it real." Jiwon raised her hand. Could I try to interact with Bahram? Under your supervision?" Junho smiled. "Sure, come on down." Jiwon made her way to the stage, her legs shaking slightly. The entire amphitheater watched as she approached the dog. Junho gave quiet instructions. "Hold your hand out, palm down. Let him smell you first. That's how dogs learn about new people." Jiwon extended her hand. Bahram sniffed it carefully, his wet nose tickling her skin. Then his tongue came out and licked her fingers. Despite her nervousness, Jiwon laughed. "Now you can pet him. Just stroke his head and back. Gentle movements." Jiwon touched Bahram's fur. It was soft and warm. She could feel his breathing, feel his heart beating. He leaned into her touch, eyes closing in contentment. This close, he didn't seem scary at all. He seemed peaceful, happy. The crowd watched this interaction with growing understanding. The predator accepting touch from prey, the human guiding and protecting both parties, the trust flowing in all directions. When Jiwon returned to her seat, she was smiling. Several others raised their hands, asking if they could try too. At the back of the amphitheater, Yoonji turned to Hyeji. "I believe the council will need to revise our classification system. This creature is not a pet in the traditional sense. And it's not a weapon, despite its capabilities. It's something we don't have a word for in our language." "What would you call it?" Hyeji asked. Yoonji watched as Junho accepted questions from the crowd, Bahram sitting calmly at his side. "A partner, a friend, a family member who happens to have teeth." The emergency alarm woke everyone on the station at the same time, a harsh, blaring sound that meant something had gone very wrong. Hyeji was at her station in minutes, pulling up the emergency feeds on her display. What she saw made her feel cold inside. Maintenance Sector 7 had suffered a structural collapse. A support beam had failed, causing a cascade of falling debris and twisted metal. 3 workers had been performing routine repairs when it happened. Now they were trapped somewhere in the wreckage, and the environmental sensors showed toxic gas leaking into the area. They had maybe 2 hours before the air became completely unbreathable. Taemin coordinated the rescue teams from the security center. They sent in their best equipment, heavy lifting drones, structural scanners, remote-controlled probes. But the wreckage was too unstable. Every time they tried to move something, more debris shifted. The spaces were too tight. The drones couldn't navigate through the collapsed tunnels. They could hear the trapped workers calling for help, but they couldn't reach them. 1 hour passed, then 90 minutes. The rescue teams were making no progress. The workers' voices were getting weaker. Junho appeared at the security center without being called. Bahram was with him, alert and ready. The dog seemed to sense the tension in the air. "I heard the emergency alert," Junho said. "Is there anything I can do to help?" Taemin looked at him, then at Bahram. An impossible idea began to form in his mind. "The spaces in the wreckage are too small for our equipment. Our drones can't fit through the gaps. But your dog—" "You want Bahram to go into the collapse zone?" Junho asked. "I know it's dangerous, I know it's asking a lot, but we're running out of time." Hyeji joined them, having heard the exchange. "Wait, you can't be serious. Send the creature into that disaster area. How would that help?" Junho was already pulling up information on his datapad. "On Earth, we use dogs for search and rescue operations all the time. Earthquakes, building collapses, natural disasters. Dogs can fit through spaces humans can't. Their sense of smell can locate people buried under rubble. They can move quickly through unstable terrain." "But this isn't Earth," Hyeji protested. "This is a toxic, unstable collapse zone. We have workers trapped in there. We can't risk adding a casualty to the list." "Bahram is trained for this kind of work. Before I became a cargo pilot, I was part of a disaster response team. Bahram and I have done this before." Junho looked down at his dog. "He wants to help. He can feel that something is wrong. This is what he was bred for, what he was trained for." The station council convened an emergency meeting that lasted exactly 4 minutes. They had no other options. The trapped workers were dying. If the human believed his dog could help, they had to try. Junho suited up in protective gear while Taemin explained what they knew about the collapse zone. 3 workers were trapped in what used to be a storage area. The structural scanners showed a rough location, but the exact position was unclear. The path to reach them was blocked by tons of debris. "Bahram will need something with their scent," Junho said. They retrieved clothing items from the workers' quarters. Bahram sniffed each one carefully, committing the scents to memory. His entire demeanor had changed. This wasn't the playful dog from the amphitheater demonstration. This was a working dog, focused and serious. Junho attached a small camera to Bahram's collar so the rescue team could see what the dog saw. Then he knelt down and looked into Bahram's eyes. "Find them, boy. Find the people who need help." They entered the collapse zone together. The destruction was worse than the feeds had shown. Metal beams jutted out at dangerous angles. Wires sparked where they had been torn from their connections. The air was thick with dust and the acrid smell of leaking chemicals. Bahram moved forward carefully, testing each step before putting his weight down. His nose worked constantly, sorting through thousands of scents. Junho followed as close as he could, but there were places only Bahram could go. The dog squeezed through a gap between 2 fallen wall panels. Junho watched on his wrist display as Bahram navigated a tunnel of twisted metal. The camera feed showed the dog's perspective as he climbed over obstacles, crawled under barriers, always moving toward something. In the security center, dozens of people watched the feed. They saw Bahram's determination, his intelligence, the way he chose his path carefully, finding routes that wouldn't cause more collapses. "There," Minseo said, pointing at the screen. His ears perked up. He heard something. Bahram moved faster now, pulling himself through a particularly narrow gap. The camera feed showed a small open space on the other side. 3 Veline workers were huddled together, conscious but weak. Their faces showed relief when they saw Bahram appear. "He found them," Taemin announced over the communication system. "The dog found them." But finding them was only half the problem. The rescue team still couldn't reach them through the collapsed tunnels. The route Bahram had taken was too small for any of their equipment. Junho was already thinking ahead. Bahram can guide you to them. He'll lead your team through a path that's safe and stable. Follow his movements exactly. Where he steps, you step. It took 40 minutes of careful work. Bahram went back and forth, showing the rescue team the safe route through the debris. When they reached an intersection of fallen beams, he indicated which way to go. When a section looked unstable, he found an alternative path. They were almost there. The rescue team could see the trapped workers now, could reach them in just a few more minutes. That was when the secondary collapse happened. A support structure gave way with a screaming sound of tearing metal. Debris began falling. The rescue team dove back the way they had come, barely escaping. But the trapped workers were still there, and now more rubble was falling toward them. Bahram was closest. He didn't hesitate. The dog threw himself forward, positioning his body over the smallest worker, shielding her with his own mass. A piece of metal struck Bahram's back, then another. The dog yelped in pain but didn't move from his protective position. Junho was screaming Bahram's name, trying to reach him, but the rescue team held him back. It wasn't safe. The whole section was coming down. Then, as quickly as it started, the collapse stopped. The structure settled into a new configuration. Emergency silence filled the space, broken only by dust settling and the sound of Bahram whimpering. The rescue team moved fast. They pulled out the 3 workers, then carefully lifted Bahram away from the rubble. Blood matted his fur where the falling metal had struck him. His back leg wasn't supporting weight correctly, but his tail wagged weakly when he saw Junho. They evacuated everyone from the collapse zone. The medical team took the 3 workers immediately. They were injured, but alive. They would survive. Bahram was taken to the station's medical bay. The veterinary medical database that Junho had uploaded weeks ago proved invaluable. The doctors, who had never treated an earth animal before, followed the instructions carefully. Bahram had a fractured rib and several deep cuts, but nothing that wouldn't heal. 3 hours after the collapse, Junho sat beside Bahram's medical bed. The dog was sedated, breathing slowly and evenly. His injuries had been treated and bandaged. He would make a full recovery. Ambassador Kyung-won arrived with Somin. The child carried a small, stuffed toy that she placed carefully next to Bahram's head. "For when he wakes up," Somin said quietly. "So, he knows we're grateful." Kyung-won looked at Junho. "Your companion saved 3 lives today. He risked his own safety for beings that aren't even his species. Why would a predator do that?" "Because that's what dogs do," Junho said. His voice was rough with emotion. "They protect. They help. They give everything they have for the people they care about, even people they just met." More visitors came as the hours passed. Doyoon brought food for Junho. Min Seo brought medical supplies. Jiwon came with flowers, a human custom she had researched. Even Yoonji and the station council representatives appeared to pay their respects. By the time Bahram woke up the next morning, the decision had already been made. The station council had met and voted unanimously. Dogs were officially classified as honored companions, with full access to all areas of the station. More than that, they were recognized as working partners, capable of performing rescue operations that no machine could accomplish. Hyeji visited that afternoon. She found Junho helping Bahram take slow, careful steps around the medical bay. The dog's tail wagged despite his obvious discomfort. "I came to apologize," Hyeji said. "When you first arrived, I saw Bahram as a threat. A dangerous predator that didn't belong here. I was wrong." "You were scared," Junho replied. "That's natural. Bahram looks scary if you don't understand what he is." "What he is," Hyeji said slowly, "is a hero. What he is family to you. What he is proof that humans see the world differently than the rest of us." "How so?" We see a predator. You see a partner. We see danger. You see potential. We see what things are. You see what they could become. Hyeji reached out carefully and touched Bahram's head. The dog leaned into her touch, just as he had with Jiwon during the demonstration. Perhaps that's humanity's real gift to the galaxy. You don't fear nature. You befriend it. 2 weeks later, Bahram had healed enough to walk normally again. Junho was preparing for his next cargo run, loading supplies onto his ship. Minseo found him in the docking bay. "Before you go, I wanted to give you this," she said, handing him a data chip. "It's my research paper about human domestication and the relationship between your species and dogs. I'm submitting it to the Xenobiology Journal." "What did you conclude?" Junho asked. "That dogs are humanity's greatest achievement. Not your technology, not your art or culture. Dogs. You took a wild predator and turned it into family. You bridged the gap between species in a way no one else has ever managed, and in doing so, you revealed something profound about yourselves. Which is? That humans don't just adapt to their environment. You change it. You take what nature gives you and imagine something better, something kinder, something built on trust instead of fear." Minseo smiled. "The galaxy is better for having humans in it. And dogs." As Junho's ship prepared to depart, the station's residents gathered to say goodbye. Soman hugged Bahram carefully, mindful of his healing injuries. Jiwon gave Junho a list of other stations that were now requesting visits from humans with dogs. Apparently, word had spread quickly. Hyeji stood at the viewport, watching the ship pull away from the dock. Beside her, Taemin shook his head in wonder. "A few weeks ago, I saw that dog as a threat," he said. "Now I'm disappointed to see him leave." "I think that's how humans operate," Hyeji replied. "They show up with something that terrifies us, and before we know it, we can't imagine life without it." Inside his ship, Junho set the navigation computer for his next destination. Bahram lay on his bed, the stuffed toy from Soman tucked between his paws. The dog's eyes were already closing, ready for another long journey through space with his human. On Junho's communication panel, a message arrived. It was from Jiwon. She had attached a picture of herself at the station's adoption center, holding a small creature she had adopted. The caption read, "Not a dog, but inspired by one. Thank you for teaching us to see differently." Junho smiled and scratched Bahram's ears. "Ready for the next adventure, boy?" Bahram's tail thumped against the floor in response. Together, human and dog headed out into the stars, carrying with them a simple truth that the galaxy was only beginning to understand. The most dangerous predator Earth had ever produced wasn't the one with the biggest teeth or the sharpest claws. It was the species that had learned to turn enemies into friends, to build bridges instead of walls, and to see potential where others saw only fear. It was the species that had befriended the wolf and called it family.